They had 30 seconds left before the station died, and everyone knew it. The evacuation alarm screamed through the metal halls of Outpost Kestrel, a drifting research hub above a dead moon. Lights strobed red, then white, then red again, like the station itself was blinking in panic. Smoke rolled along the ceiling. Somewhere deeper inside, a reactor coughed and boomed, shaking dust from the vents. Jace Rellan ran against the stampede. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't special ops. He was a maintenance engineer with grease on his hands and a scar along his eyebrow from a wrench accident. But he moved with the quiet speed of someone who understood machines, and people, better than they understood themselves. He reached the last junction before the pods and saw the truth. Only one escape pod was still alive. A crowd of terrified passengers pressed around it, but the pod's indicator was blinking yellow, half power, damaged lock. Security officers shoved people back, trying to form a line. The line wasn't working. Lines never worked when death was this close. Jace pushed through, coughing, eyes watering. His comm earpiece crackled with a tired voice. "Jace," said Captain Maroven, exhausted and hoarse. "If you're near the pod bay." "I'm here," Jace said. "Only one pod left." "I know." A pause. "We have a problem." Jace saw the problem a second later. Near the wall, half hidden behind a shattered panel, a girl sat with her knees pulled to her chest. Her skin wasn't human. Pale, luminous, like moonlight on ice. Her eyes were large and dark with a faint silver ring. A thin crest of delicate bone traced her cheek like natural jewelry. She was alien. And she was young. Not a child, but not far from it. Her hands shook as she tried to breathe through the smoke. One of the security officers spotted her and stiffened. His weapon rose without hesitation. "Contact," the officer yelled. "Unregistered Xeno." The crowd responded the way crowds always did. Fear turned into anger because anger feels like control. Someone shouted, "It's her fault." Someone else yelled, "Throw her out." The girl flinched like she expected to be hit. Jace stepped between her and the gun. "Lower it," he snapped. The officer's eyes widened. "She's not on the manifest. We don't know what she is." "She's alive," Jace said. "That's what she is." Captain Ven's voice hit Jace's ear again. Calmer now, colder. "Jace. Protocol says." "Protocol doesn't breathe," Jace answered. "She does." Another blast rocked the station. A long groan of metal ran through the corridor like a dying animal. The pod's countdown display flickered. 28 seconds. The officer tightened his grip. "Move. Now." Jace turned to the girl. "Hey. Can you stand?" Her lips parted. Her voice came out thin, broken by smoke. I can." "What's your name?" A blink. Like she hadn't expected a question. "Scylla." "Scylla," Jay said quickly. "Listen to me. When that door opens, you go inside. Do you understand?" Her eyes locked on his. "You." Jace forced a grin he didn't feel. "I'll be right behind you." The officer barked. "Rellan. Get out of the way." Jace didn't move. He reached into the broken panel behind Scylla and pulled out what he'd been hunting for, a thin bundle of emergency fiber cords and a little black box, a manual override coupler. His fingers worked fast, snapping the coupler into the pod's damaged lock interface. The pod's indicator changed from yellow to green. The crowd surged. Security tried to hold them back, but panic doesn't respect uniforms. Hands grabbed at the pod door. Someone screamed. Someone fell. Jace shoved his shoulder into the door mechanism and forced it open. "Go!" he shouted at Scylla. She stumbled forward, then paused, hesitating as if she couldn't believe permission was real. Jace grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the opening. The officer lunged to stop them, but Jace drove an elbow into the officer's chest hard enough to steal his air. The officer fell back, shocked more than hurt. "Jace!" Captain Ven shouted in his ear. "What are you doing?" "Saving a life," Jace said. The countdown display flashed. 12 seconds. Scylla climbed into the pod, turning back immediately. Her eyes were wide with horror. "No," she whispered. "No. You come." Jace shook his head. He could feel heat through the floor now. The station was cooking. He leaned forward, fast, and pressed something into her palm. A small, battered metal token, an old Earth maintenance tag stamped with a serial number, worn smooth by years of use. "So you remember," he said. Her fingers closed around it, trembling. "Why?" Jace looked past her, past the pod, at the crowd. At the fear. At the cruelty that fear becomes. He kept his voice low, so only she heard. "Because somebody has to prove we're more than what we're scared of." The pod's door began to hiss shut automatically. Scylla's face twisted. "I will," her voice cracked. "I will come back. I swear it. I will repay this." Jace smiled again. A real smile this time, small but steady. "Then live long enough to do it." The door sealed. The pod released. It shot away into darkness, a bright spark leaving a dying station behind. Jace stood there as the crowd stared at him like he'd committed a crime. He turned, wiped soot from his brow, and began moving deeper into the station, toward the engine spine, toward the only chance anyone else might have. Captain Ven's voice was softer now. "Jace, you just gave away the last seat." Jace ran anyway. "Yeah," he said. "I know." And behind him, Outpost Kestrel started to break apart like a cracked shell. Scylla didn't cry until she was alone. The pod's interior was cramped, designed for one passenger and a short ride to safety. Its screens flickered with emergency navigation warnings, but it held together. The engines pushed her away from the station as debris bloomed behind her like a slow-motion storm. She clutched the metal token in her fist until her knuckles went white. On the screen, the station flared, first a bright line, then a widening blossom of light as sections ruptured. The explosion was silent in space, but Scylla felt it in her bones anyway. A life had been traded for hers. She whispered his name to the empty pod, tasting it like a promise. "Jace." When she reached the nearest emergency beacon route, a patrol ship intercepted her. The ship belonged to the Via Dominion, the very alien power that had been hunting Outpost Kestrel in the first place. Their crest was painted on the hull, a vertical eye over a chain. They dragged her from the pod with shock cuffs and cold voices. "She was on the human station," one guard said. "Could be a spy." "She's a Lumenborn," another muttered, nervous. "That kind shouldn't exist anymore." Scylla didn't answer. She held the token hidden in her sleeve, pressed to her skin like a heartbeat. They took her to a Dominion processing facility. They questioned her for days. They asked who she was, why she was there, what the humans were building. When she stayed quiet, they hurt her. When she spoke truth, they called it lies. Finally, an officer with polished armor and bored eyes leaned close and hissed, "Humans are clever. That's why we crush them early." Scylla stared back, steady despite the shaking in her arms. "Humans are more than clever," she said, and earned another strike for it. But pain taught her something important. The Dominion feared humans. Not their weapons. Not their fleets. Their minds. Scylla survived because she learned to watch. To listen. To study patterns like a language. She noticed guard rotations. She noticed which doors had real locks and which had lazy ones. She learned that the Dominion relied on control, not trust. Everything was chained, everything monitored. And she learned another thing. The Dominion wasn't just conquering. They were hunting something. A rumor whispered in the facility's darkest corners, a human relic hidden somewhere in free space. A device that could break Dominion command codes. A key that could turn their own system against them. The guards called it the Ghost Key. Scylla didn't know if the Ghost Key was real. But she knew this: if the Dominion was afraid of it, humans had already built something worth fearing. One night, years into her captivity, a riot broke out in the lower blocks. Prisoners rushed the corridor. Sirens screamed. The facility's lights flashed the same way Outpost Kestrel's had flashed in its final moments. Scylla's lungs froze. For a second she wasn't here anymore. She was back in smoke and alarms, watching a human give away the last seat. She forced herself to move. In the chaos, she slipped past a fallen guard, stole a keycard, and ran. She didn't run blindly. She ran like she'd been planning it for years, because she had. She made it to a hangar bay. She found a cargo shuttle with half-fueled tanks. She powered it up, hands shaking, heart hammering. The hangar doors began to close. A Dominion officer spotted her and lifted a weapon. "Stop." Scylla turned, then did something she hadn't done since the pod. She chose defiance. She threw the cargo throttle forward, slamming the shuttle through the shrinking gap. Metal screamed. Sparks burst across the hull. The shuttle tore free into open space. She was out. But escape wasn't safety. It was only the beginning. The Dominion would hunt her now, harder than before. And she had nowhere to go. Unless. She opened her sleeve. The metal token slid into her palm. Old Earth stamp. Maintenance serial. A human mark. She stared at it and made a decision so sharp it felt like stepping off a cliff. She would find Jace Rellan's people. If he was alive, she would repay him. If he was dead, she would repay him anyway, by making sure the Dominion never did this again. She didn't have a map. She didn't have allies. But she had a promise. And a mind that had learned, the hard way, how empires break. 8 years after Outpost Kestrel, humans were not winning. They were surviving. The Dominion pushed across sectors like a slow tide, swallowing colonies, cutting trade routes, choking fuel lines. Every time a human fleet rose to fight, Dominion gravity snares dragged ships out of formation like toys. The Dominion believed in one simple truth: humans could be managed. So humans adapted. They stopped fighting like an empire and started fighting like a species with nothing to lose. They built hidden stations inside asteroid shadows. They used civilian junk freighters as weapons. They wrote code that looked like broken nonsense because Dominion scanners were trained to see order. Humans learned to weaponize chaos. And somewhere deep in the Halcyon belt, in a welded-together base made from salvaged hull plates and stubbornness, Jace Rellan was still alive. He should have died on Outpost Kestrel. By all math, by all logic, he should have been Ash. But Jace had done what humans did best when faced with impossible odds. He improvised. In the last minutes before the station broke, he'd reached the engine spine and flooded it with coolant, forcing a partial vent that launched a sealed maintenance capsule away from the blast. He'd survived in that capsule for 2 days on emergency gels and recycled air until scavengers found him. The rebellion gave him a new name, Rellan the Ghost, the man who walked out of a station's grave. Jace didn't want the legend. He wanted quiet. He worked in the Halcyon base fixing power grids, building cheap thrusters, helping the Resistance keep ships flying. He laughed less than he used to. He slept in short bursts. And some nights, when the base lights dimmed, he found himself staring into the dark and thinking of pale eyes and a trembling hand holding his token. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself she'd survived and gone far away. Then, one day, the base's early warning net went wild. A ship had entered the belt, alone, damaged, broadcasting an ancient distress pulse with Dominion encryption fragments inside it. The Resistance panicked. "It's a trap," people shouted. "Shoot it before it calls a fleet." Jace pushed through the command deck and stared at the screen. The incoming ship was small, rough, patched in places like it had crawled through hell to get here. And its pilot requested to dock using 3 words in Broken Earth standard. "Oh. Life. Paid." Jace's breath stopped. The ship docked in Bay 3 under heavy guard. Human fighters ringed it, weapons charged. The airlock opened slowly. Scylla stepped out. She looked older, harder. Her luminous skin was dulled by scars that didn't fully heal. Her hair was cut short. Her posture was straight, controlled, the posture of someone who'd learned not to show fear. But her eyes were the same, dark with a faint silver ring. Jace walked forward without realizing he'd moved. Around him, soldiers raised rifles. A commander barked, "Hold." Scylla lifted both hands, empty, and reached into her jacket pocket with deliberate slowness. She pulled out a battered metal token. Jace's token. She held it up so the whole bay could see. I was on Outpost Kestrel, she said, voice steady despite the tremor underneath it. A human gave me the last seat. I said I would repay him. Her gaze locked onto Jace like a laser finding its target. I found him. The room didn't breathe. Jace stepped closer, eyes burning. Scylla. For a moment, something in her face cracked, just a little. Like she'd been carrying a weight for 8 years and finally set it down. Yes, she whispered. Jace. The commander's voice was sharp. Explain why a Dominion prisoner ship shows up in my bay. Scylla turned toward the commander, and when she spoke, she sounded like someone who had stared at the Dominion's teeth from the inside. Because the Dominion is building a weapon, she said. And because humans are the only ones clever enough to stop it. The commander scoffed. You expect us to trust you? Scylla looked at Jace again, then back at the commander. I don't need you to trust me, she said. I need you to understand the clock is already counting down. She stepped forward, lowering her voice. The Dominion has learned how to rewrite loyalty. They didn't put Scylla in a guest room. They put her in a secured briefing chamber with 2 guards and 1 camera, like the walls could judge her. Jace stood on the other side of the table, hands braced on metal. He watched her closely, searching for deception, searching for the Dominion inside her. He didn't find it. He found exhaustion, control, and something sharper, purpose. Scylla projected stolen data onto the table display. Dominion schematics bloomed into light, angular designs, heavy with classified seals. The title line froze the room. Obedience lattice. Field deployment. The commander, Rear Knox, leaned in, eyes narrowing. What is this? A broadcast weapon, Scylla said. Not a bomb. Not a laser. A command wave. It doesn't kill bodies. It kills choices. Rear's jaw tightened. Mind control. Scylla nodded once. They tested it on prisoners. On frontier species. It turns fear into loyalty. Pain into obedience. A whole colony can become Dominion in 1 day. Someone in the back whispered, "That's impossible." Scylla looked at him calmly. "I used to think that too." Jace's throat felt dry. "Why are you telling us?" Scylla set the token down on the table. It made a small metallic sound, but it felt loud. Because a human gave me the last seat. That act broke something in me, in a good way. It showed me a different kind of strength. Rhea crossed her arms. "And you think that strength can beat this weapon?" Scylla's eyes hardened. "Yes. If you let humans do what humans do best." Rhea didn't like being told what to do. Nobody leading a resistance liked it. But she was smart enough to smell truth when it walked into the room wearing scars. "What do you need?" Rhea asked. Scylla tapped the projection. "A Dominion relay array. A specific one. If we inject a countersignal into the array before activation, we can scramble the lattice." Rhea frowned. "So we break their weapon." Scylla shook her head. "No. Humans don't just break things." She looked at Jace when she said it. "Humans steal them." The plan came together with the kind of ugly beauty that only desperation creates. A small strike team. 1 captured Dominion shuttle with forged credentials. A sabotage package built from human scrap and Scylla's inside knowledge. The goal wasn't to destroy the relay array, it was to take control of it long enough to flip the obedience lattice back onto the Dominion fleet. The risk was suicidal. Rhea chose the team anyway. Jace was on it, because he couldn't stand the idea of Scylla going alone. Scylla didn't argue, but when they suited up, she quietly slipped Jace an old Dominion access tag. "If things go wrong," she said, "this can open a maintenance hatch behind the relay core." "And if things go right?" Jace asked. Scylla hesitated. "Then I finally keep my promise." They boarded the shuttle. As it left the Halcyon belt, the stars stretched into lines, and Jace felt the old fear return, fear not of death, but of meaning. Of what his choice 8 years ago had started. They reached the relay array disguised as debris, an enormous lattice of black metal floating near a dead planet. Dominion patrol craft circled like sharks. Scylla piloted with hand steady, voice calm, as if she'd been born in this danger. "Don't speak unless you must," she warned. Dominion comms record breath patterns. Jace muttered, "That's insane." Scylla glanced at him. "So are humans." They docked. Inside the relay, Dominion engineers moved through sterile corridors. Everything was clean. Everything was controlled. It made Jace's skin crawl. Rhea's voice came through the comm remember. "We're ghosts. In and out." Scylla guided them to the relay core. The core was a cathedral of cables and light, an engine made of signals instead of fire. They planted the human-built sabotage package. But before Scylla could activate it, the air changed. A Dominion voice echoed over the intercom, smooth and pleased. "Welcome, little Lumenborn." Scylla froze. Jace felt it too, the sudden understanding that they were expected. The voice continued, almost gentle. "And welcome, humans. Your creativity is impressive." Lights snapped on. Armed Dominion troopers poured into the core chamber from hidden hatches. Scylla's jaw tightened. "Run," she whispered. But it was already too late. The first shots cracked through the relay core like thunder. Humans moved fast. Because humans train for the moment everything went wrong. Rhea's team scattered behind pillars of metal. Jace rolled, slammed a charge pack into his rifle, fired at a trooper's visor. Dominion armor held. Dominion control held. But humans didn't rely on armor. They relied on angles, timing, and the enemy's assumptions. Scylla sprinted toward the core console anyway, dodging fire, sliding behind a panel. Her fingers danced across Dominion symbols like she was born reading them. The intercom voice returned, amused. "You truly believed you could steal the lattice?" Scylla's voice rose, sharp. "I believe humans can." Jace crawled behind a bank of cables to reach her. "What are you doing?" Scylla shoved the sabotage package into his hands. "Human hands," she said. "Human logic. You built this. You trigger it." Jace stared. "You can do it faster." Scylla's eyes met his. In them was 8 years of captivity, pain, and learning. In them was also a strange warmth. "I didn't come back to be the hero," she said. "I came back to repay the debt." A trooper vaulted the panel. Jace fired point blank into the trooper's joint seams. 2 shots, then a third. The trooper fell. Rhea shouted in the comm. "Jace. We're pinned. Core chamber is sealing." The room's doors began to slide shut. Dominion lockdown. They were about to be trapped inside the relay core, where the obedience lattice would activate. Jace looked at the package. It needed a manual trigger. A physical close-range injection. Not a remote click. "Scylla," he said slowly, "this is like Kestrel." Scylla didn't flinch. "No," she said. "This time, we both live." She grabbed Jace's wrist and dragged him toward a side hatch. The Dominion voice laughed. "Running? How human." Scylla threw the access tag into the hatch lock. It blinked green. They slipped into a maintenance tunnel just as the core doors sealed. The tunnel shook with distant impacts. The relay's systems hummed louder, charging. Jace's comm crackled. Rhea's voice came through, tight. "We're cut off. The lattice is spinning up. Do you have a way to trigger the package?" Jace looked at Scylla, then at the tunnel ahead. Scylla nodded once. "There's a signal artery junction. If we inject there, it spreads through the relay." Jace swallowed. "And someone has to stay behind to hold the line." Scylla's jaw clenched. "Yes." They reached the junction, an open chamber where thick cable bundles pulsed with light. The sabotage package glowed faintly, waiting. Dominion troopers poured into the tunnel behind them. Jace raised his rifle. "I'll do it." Scylla grabbed his arm. "No," her voice broke, just slightly. "I already watched you disappear once." Jace stared at her. You promised to repay the debt. I did, Scylla said. By giving you something back. She shoved the token into his palm. Not the metal, she whispered. The meaning. Then she turned, sprinted back toward the troopers, and detonated a small charge at her feet. Blinding flash, smoke, chaos. Humans used chaos like oxygen. Jace slammed the sabotage package into the artery junction, hands moving with instinct. He wired it in the way he'd wired broken life support panels and patched engines. He wasn't a hero. He was a builder. Rear, he shouted into the comm. When the relay goes white, hit every Dominion channel you can. Every frequency. Every band. What are you doing? Rear yelled. Jace gritted his teeth, turning their weapon into a mirror. He triggered the package. The relay array screamed with light. Across space, Dominion ships lit up, their systems suddenly flooded with a counter-signal written in human chaos code that looked like nonsense to Dominion scanners, because it wasn't orderly. It was alive. The obedience lattice didn't find human minds. It found Dominion command channels. And for the first time, the Dominion felt what they had been trying to make others feel. The sudden, terrifying loss of control. On the tactical screens of human ships hiding in the belt, Dominion fleets hesitated, formations stuttering, command lines collapsing into confusion. Rear's voice came through, stunned. Their ships, they're breaking formation. Jace exhaled hard. Hit them. Human fleets surged from hiding. Not sleek Imperial battleships, patched cruisers, mining barges with railguns welded on, cargo haulers converted into ramming platforms. Ugly ships. Honest ships. And they fought like humans fight when someone threatens their freedom. With creativity. With stubbornness. With a kind of furious brilliance. Jace stumbled back into the tunnel. Scylla was there, coughing, wounded, but standing. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment the whole war felt smaller than that look. You're alive, Jace breathed. Scylla swallowed, nodding. I told you, she whispered. This time, both live. Behind them, the relay array pulsed, now under human control. And out in the dark, a human resistance fleet, once hopeless, watched the Dominion's perfect machine collapse into human-made chaos. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. Again. And humanity answered the only way it knew how. By building victory out of scraps, and refusing to kneel.